Hi there, welcome back to my Instagram live chat. It is Anita Adifwe here. How have you guys been? I hope you're ready for Christmas. If you are where I am, then you're probably having to spend Christmas by yourself without family or without going into someone else's house, basically, is the deal. So, um, all right. Anyway, so I'm excited about this topic. Thank you, Atwa. Thank you for being here. Yes, my guest is here. So thank you, Pastor Shaba, for being here. I will. So I'll wait for him to get in. I'm excited about today's topic. Really excited about today's topic, and that is because it marries two things that I am really passionate about. One really speaks to who I am in terms of my identity. I'm a Christian. If you've been following me, you know that. Hopefully you do. Thank you, Pastor, for being here. And then Gianna talks about, deals with my passion for all things sexual abuse and sexual violence. And so it is really exciting for me. And I have one of my favorite persons in the last 5 years. I've known him for 5 years, and he's been my pastor doing this with me today. So it's really a great honor to have him on board. Thank you for coming, Pastor Shaba.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. God bless you.
Yes, sir. So for those who don't know yet, Pastor Shaba is the lead pastor at the Redeemed Christian Church of God, Peculiar People's Parish in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada. And I mentioned earlier, is my pastor. He's a man who is given to helping people fulfill destiny, fulfill their God-given destiny. And he's one of the very few people who knows my entire story in its entirety. And that in itself, speaks a lot to, how much I trust him and how much, he's a man of integrity. And, it's not the first time I've shared with a pastor, just so we're clear. But there are times that I've been burnt and I didn't even share the whole story and I've been burnt. But, I shared with him, and even just the way he took it, he grieved with me, in itself. It was really, really interesting to see. And, I appreciated that. And I know that one of the things about sexual violence, when you've been a victim, it can hinder or almost hinder you from fulfilling God's purpose for your life. But beyond all of that, this is a man who, even times when I wanted to give up, and God knows I want to give up a lot, I thank God for people like him who are constant reminders on the need to just, forget about the past, in not in the sense of don't think about it, but in the sense of don't let it hold you back from fulfilling what God has for your life. So thank you, Pastor. Pastor, if I can just have you maybe just flip your camera, if that's okay.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering about that too.
Okay. All right, thank you, Nora. Well, Pastor is flipping his camera. Thank you, sir. Welcome, Nora. Welcome, Tammy. Welcome, Ken. Welcome, Atoa. Our official RCCG PPP handle is here. I'm sure by now some people would have figured out who is really behind that page. All right, so without much ado, we have 1 hour, as always, to spend, and we spent about 3 minutes. I have introduced Pastor. Oh, I should mention, Pastor has 4 kids. And he lives with his wife, Pastor Mrs. T.O.C. Shaba, in Regina here with us. So really good to have you with us, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And to those who would watch later. So today we're talking about sexual violence. What can the church do? Does the church have any role to play in helping to end this menace? Should the church even be having these conversations? Are there people in the church who, are perpetrators of this evil? Are there people who are victims of this? Well, I'm a testament that there are people who have been victims before of this. I'm still in the church and I don't plan on going anywhere. When you've tasted God, it's really good. And, but then what do we do? All right. I mentioned earlier about how I tried to share before and I've been burnt a number of times just trying to find help and going to people even within the church and being burnt by that. So what exactly should the church be doing. And that's all that we're going to be talking about. And so my first question to you, Pastor, today is, I just want to hear your own thoughts. Is the church immune, from these experiences, with people having sexual experience, like even within the church? Is that something that we're immune to? It never happens in the church, or does it happen?
Thank you very much, my dear sister Anita, for having me here today. I am excited in this program, and I'm excited that many people are interested in what we do, especially when it comes to how we can prevent sexual violence in our society. I'm so excited that we are speaking out now, because one of the issues that has been associated with sexual violence in the past is the discrimination that the negative impression that is attached to, especially and because of that, people don't speak out, people don't speak up, they just keep it to themselves, and we start seeing the result of it in their future, in their lives. Sometimes it goes with people to their death even. People cannot have grown it. It's so unfortunate. But if we have allowed them to speak about it, to speak out, and and to heal in the process, maybe that will have really helped a lot of people to survive impact and the negative impression that sexual violence has created. So back to your question, the church is not immune at all. It's not immune to sexual violence. We see it from time to time in the church. One thing we need to know is that there are about three. I categorize people into three. People that comes to church, I put it into three categories. One, I would say people that came to seek help. Came to seek help. Now, you also find in church people that have already found help and they are growing. They are not still qualified they are not qualified in the third group that I want to mention, which is the third group is people that gives help, people that give out help. Now, people that for help, people that have found help, but they are not yet ready to give it out, but they are still there and they are healing. And then the third category are people that are giving out help. Maybe they came, they found help, and they are grown enough to give out, or for whatever reason, the Lord helped them with some graces and they are giving out help. Now, we should think that church is a place where no evil can occur, because we have these categories of people, and anybody who is in flesh, you will fall in any of these three categories.
That's right.
Any of these three categories, there is no way we are saying we are immune. People who have problems come to church, they look for help, the problem is still there with them. So we is something we see even in the leadership. One thing that this actually cut across is that this three set of people can be found in any categories, in any cadre. You can be you can be a bishop that is actually looking for help.
That's right.
A spiritual problem, but you are the leader of the church. You will find yourself exhibiting some attributes of sexual violence against people. So church is not immune at all, if I have to answer that question. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you, sir. So when we think, and I like the categories that you give, it really helps people understand, because even beyond sexual violence, one of the things that sometimes you hear people say is, oh, well, I went to church, somebody did this to me, I'm angry, I'm leaving, but I hope that hearing it that way, people will realize that, given these three categories of people, because pastor is a pastor, he will speak some pastoral lingo, all right? So for people who might not understand, I'll help you break it down. Don't worry, I got you. So when he says if you're in the flesh, it means that if you're physically, like if you're a human being alive on this planet, you will always be in one of those categories where you're either needing help, or you found the help you're looking for if you're in church, or you're at that place where you found the help and you're willing to help others as well, come out of the situations that they are in. And these are all categories of people that can be found anywhere, including, yes, the church. And I mean, if you think about it, even Jesus had 12 disciples. One of them betrayed him. He wasn't an outsider, right? So you'd always have these people. And even in all those 12, even when Jesus left, they grew, right? They grew. We didn't see that Peter did not remain the same Peter that, he had to pray for the devil not to sift. All right. I did not come to preach. All right. So, and I thank you that you said that. So we're not immune in the church. And one thing that I appreciate, one thing I always tell people, mostly teenagers that I teach at church, is that in the Bible there are answers to virtually almost everything, every life question, every life concerns. There are answers to it in the Bible. So if you're wondering that is that really something the Bible has said about sexual violence? Yes, as a matter of fact, there are a number of things. But one of the stories, I want us to look at a story categorically in the Bible that happened. And from that story, we're going to pull out a number of questions that, I think depicts part of the issues we have regarding sexual violence in our world, and even much more so within the church. Now, we may not go into the verse itself, but I believe Pastor is familiar with the story as well. For those who might want to look it up later, it's in 2 Samuel, the book of 2 Samuel, chapter 13, and pretty much the whole chapter of chapter 13, or 1 to 39 precisely. And it's the story of two siblings, or more like three siblings. Let's just say it's within a family. And that's the family of yours truly, King David. Now, in that scripture, we hear and see that one of the brothers, he had, David was a man that had many wives, so he had some of his kids were half siblings to one another, and one of them, called Amnon, raped his half sister called Tamar. And in this whole story, when you go through the entire story and you read it, pretty much high level summary is that, someone advised Amnon, Amnon says he has sexual desires. He has desires towards his sister. He loves her. And somebody else advises him, why not tell your dad here's what you will do, pretend like you're sick, ask your dad to release her to come give you food. And when she comes, you can do whatever you want with her. And he takes that advice. And truly, Tamar comes in to cook for him and feed him and try to help him get well. And then he discards all his servants, and in the privacy of his room, he raped her. And when he raped her, she begged him to say, hey, you know what, at least marry me so that, the shame can leave me. And he refuses. And the Bible records that, he sent her away. Now, there was something really interesting that the Bible mentioned about what happened with her. Seemingly, I'd assume for the rest of her life, was that she went into a place of desolation, right? And what happened was David heard about it, but didn't do anything for Tamar. Absalom, his other son, who was Tamar's full sibling, ends up killing Amnon. All right. So when you really look at it and you read this story, it says a lot. All right. And one of the things that, I want to ask from this story, because we see it happen a lot where it feels like, nobody does anything. People get raped. Nobody does anything. But one of the questions that I think I want to pull out of this story is the same way David was silent about this issue and did absolutely nothing. Should the church be silent in that same manner? Is that an indication that the church should be silent about these issues? Or, are there dangers that we can perceive if the church chooses to be silent? I mean, looking at that story, David's silence, I don't know if it's his silence that made Absalom eventually kill Amnon on behalf of his sister, but we see a lot of mess come out of that. So is the lesson there that we should be silent about it just like David did? Or what exactly is the lesson there for us?
Thank you very much. I would say no. The church should never be silent when it comes to sexual violence. We should never, ever at all. The church shouldn't be a place where such ungodly act thrives. Because when you're all that, you're just creating a platform for evil to thrive. And if this is not condemned outrightly, when it is where we see that the device, is exposed to some certain dangers, So I would really say no, not be silent. We've seen a situation whereby church has been silent for years. It's a saying: evil can run for 20 years. One day the truth will catch up with it. Some leadership of the church, of some churches, were kind of covered up for a while, and then nobody was trying to expose them. Nobody was even working on that at all until evil caught up with them. The evil they have done several years actually still caught up with them, and
Mm.
the church should be a place where a strong voice is coming out to condemn violence.
So I like the first thing you even said, that when the church stays silent, then we create the environment for this kind of acts to continue, and the church should be a place that strongly speaks against these things. So why do you think it's important then? What are some of the impending dangers that we tend to face if we stay silent about these things, even as a church, as a body of God?
It's scary that the church is going to be silent about something as terrible as sexual violence. It's for me, it's a very scary threshold to work on. If church condemning sexual violence, we are, first of all, we are denting the image of God in our midst. You know, yeah, we know God cannot be dented, but we claim to be standing for righteousness, and we are allowed. Sexual violence is nothing but a crime. It's injustice, and it's just like somebody saying, you know what, let's cover up, evil. There's no better way for evil to try when the righteous people are doing nothing about it. So it's that the church, speaks out to ensure that the community, the society knows exactly what we stand for. Now, other things that happen is that the message of Christ that we are bringing to the world is corrupted. Our Lord Jesus is pure, is holy. Holiness is the nature of God. And so the message we are preaching is corrupted. Whether we like it or not, there is always a spiritual undertone, a spiritual shift that happens whenever all this kind of abomination happens. So in the realm of the spirit as well, you can't feel God's power in such a place where evil thrives. You can't feel everything that church stands for is actually impacted negatively if the church not speak against this.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. So you can't claim to stand for righteousness and stay silent when there is unrighteousness, and even much more so when that unrighteousness is done within your own camp. And I might digress a little here, but it kind of makes sense because reading through the Old Testament pieces of the Bible, especially sometimes, and I've heard people question this where they say, oh, wow, some of the punishment that God doled out on these people was really harsh, and it doesn't sound like a loving God and all that. But I think there is another perspective we can take to that, is just to show the heart of God, in a sense, towards evil and how much he can't stand evil. And I will get to that even in a bit, and especially how this even fits into sexual violence. All right, but again, in the same vein, I guess it is unfair for us to say that we're a body of righteous people who then hear about this unrighteousness and then we refuse to speak up against it, especially even knowing what is at stake with the spiritual undertone that you talked about, right? And how earlier we talked about the fact that someone who has been a victim of sexual violence, that one of the things I think they're at risk of is that it can impact them being able to fulfill destiny, their God-given destiny, just because they're so broken about it and everything. So, I guess it makes sense that, as a body that is righteous, we're able to speak to those things and help people, come into a place where they are, and help people come into a place, where they can fulfill God's destiny. Thank you very much, sir, for that. So in the context of the story with David, if we were to assume that that whole family is the current day family of God, right? And we as a church today, we had to advise. So let's say, God forbid, but let's say that happened in a place like in a particular church, right? What are some of the things that, seeing everything that played out with that family and how, it led to a number of chaos within that family? What are some of the things that, if we were to say, we're advising David to say, okay, don't keep quiet about, hearing about sexual violence happening under your own roof? What are some things we'll probably advise to say, these are the things that we can do differently as a church to help, not create an enabling environment for sexual violence, for perpetrators of sexual violence?
David's case is rather a very unfortunate incident, and I'm very sympathetic of David right now, because if we want to go by the law, and the law that is given in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 22, we found out that everyone that commits sexual violence must be stoned to death, especially the man that forces himself on the woman, which is always the case, most times the case. Now, David as a king, and at that time, the king has the responsibility to sit on the seat of judgment. He will be the one to pass judgment to the subject. Now, just imagine the subject now is 2 kids. It's a very difficult time for King David. It was a very difficult scenario for the entire family, what had happened. And if we want to go by law, Tamar should be stoned to death by the order of the king. But as you rightly mentioned, the scripture did not record anywhere where King David actually acted in such manner. And that must have been from his fatherly, passionate heart for his son. Because again, we saw how he mourned Amnon at the end of the day when Amnon was killed in that story. So having said that, I don't think it's the right thing to do in our own current dispensation, to be quiet about things, because to be quiet is dangerous. Sometimes, and to all our viewers, I'm not sure if everybody is a Christian, but sometimes too, there are some spiritual undertone that goes with all this kind of violence that we're saying. So if you tame the dragon, it might come and eat your head at the end of the day. So, it's not you today. It happens to someone else's daughter. It can happen to your wife someday. It can happen to your daughter. It can happen to... So we got to tame that dragon. We got to make sure that we nip it in the bud. Otherwise, if we allow it to try, it might be that we're grooming a disaster that's going to ruin everything. So the church should not remain quiet like David. Something else should be done when it comes to sexual violent case, especially. We should have a very strong voice, to condemn it outrightly and in its totality. And we should be ready as a church to also ensure that everyone knows where we stand. Because where the problem is in church today is people don't know where church stands anymore. The leadership maybe had some issue, with sexual immorality and all of that. There are some rules and regulations that some people are afraid to set in place, and because of that, we see sexual violence becoming a repeated issue or occurrence in a certain organization. Church should not be a place where this is named. In fact, Paul, when he was talking in the book of 1 Corinthians, said, I heard some of you were going into all this form of immorality. People sleep with their wife and things like that. He said, this should not even be named among unbelievers, less of in the midst of you. Said, should I praise you for that? Say, no, I cannot. So church should be very strong in the way the church condemns sexual violence, in the midst of people, and in fact sexual immorality, as it were. Because there is no way sexual violence can come up if there are no signs and tricks of sexual immorality already dwelling in somebody who goes about, perpetrating sexual violence all around. So I would say that, David's case was rather unfortunate, but that should not be the case with the church today. The church should be ready to condemn sexual violence in its whole totality. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. And interestingly, and I say this with all sincerity, I actually never really even in just my own personal case, and I was even still talking about this with my husband that day. I was thinking to say, would it be fair to, at any point in time, name names about perpetrators? In my personal case, for instance, right? And one of the things, that I remember getting to that point was just thinking about their family members who probably never knew, right? And just thinking about, some of these people have kids who were at one time or the other my friends, you know, and just thinking about how they probably would have seen their fathers or, you know, family members, you know, be such wonderful people. Am I supposed to now come and share something that would all of a sudden taint that image that they have built? And to be honest, even I was conflicted, you know. So I'm just alluding to your point about, you know, the place David was in. And I guess maybe to some extent, maybe the place where some people might be in too, you know, and maybe even within the church where sometimes maybe you look at who we're talking about that was involved in this, you know, and even maybe an extension to what would people say that this happened within the church, right? And I think now I'm seeing some of those layers of complications that sometimes, you know, happen. But to your point, it's unfortunate that it happens. It's unfortunate that, you know, those things play out, but it shouldn't be the reason for us to keep quiet about it, because, you know, I know my husband's very short answer to it was, if they had thought about all of that, they should have thought about all of that before they even embarked on doing those things to you. So you may not mention names, but I'm sure people in those timelines will figure out who you're talking about, and they can go figure out what they want to do with themselves if their names do come out. So I guess it's unfortunate. Go ahead, sir.
Pardon me for cutting in.
It's fine.
That's exactly the reason why sexual violence in church or churches today they cover them up, you know, because the integrity of people that is affected. You look at you look at the entire, oh, how many people should hear this, that our elder in the church, or our somebody who is reputable, you know, reputable.
Exactly.
And you will not, okay, if this man has committed this sin, but okay, what about his wife? Let's forgive you. Let's not age of the wife or children. See, all of these things should be plain in the mind of whoever wants to do it if the church does not take its stand. And I agree with your husband. They should have thought about it before going at all. Thank you.
All right, sir. So please, if you're, and one thing that I think I can even say to this is that there are people who may genuinely have issues. You know, one thing I always say is that silence is the weapon of the enemy. Either in the place of you're victimized and you don't speak up to say, hey, this happened, so that people can help you, or you're someone who, because there's a saying, I'm from, well, I lived in Delta State, Nigeria. I lived in a city called Warri, and there's this saying they have there, and it's pidgin, but I'll translate it to I guess the Queen's English. But there's this saying that's not from clap, 9 dance they start, meaning well, I guess referring to progression of events. You know, you start clapping or nodding sometimes, and then next thing you know, you're shaking your whole body and you're grooving to a particular music, right? It didn't start with you just jumping into the dance. It maybe started with, for some of us, you're tapping your feet and then you get into dancing, all right? And there are some people who, did I lose Pastor? Pastor, did I lose you? It feels like I lost him. Okay, you're still here, sir? Okay.
Sorry, the network seems to be holding us back.
All right. Okay, but I think we're back on now. All right. So it is. There are some people who you already know that you're having certain issues. Say you're dealing with pornography or masturbation, whatever it is, and these things are in the episode that we did on that. You know, we saw how sometimes people get to, or one of the dangers of some of those kind of addictions that we have identified is that if you don't nip those things in the bud and talk to people and hold yourself people hold you accountable, then you might be setting yourself up for greater events, like outrightly going into rape and, you know, abusing children and molestation and all that. So if you find out that you're having issues or you're feeling certain ways that you shouldn't be feeling, or you're struggling with certain things, you know, it helps to say, open up, all right, and get the help that you need early on enough, so that you don't, you know, progress into other things. And I kind of look at that story with Amnon again. You know, imagine if Amnon had truly taken the advice of Tamar and gone to David to say, hey, this is how I feel towards this girl, right? Who knows? Maybe they would have been able to work something out, you know, that would not involve him having to rape her, she having to literally she's alive but end her life by not leaving. Bible says she went into a place of desolation and she stayed there, till whatever, and Absalom would not have had to kill him, and it was just a mess. So silence truly is the weapon of the enemy. But if you're thinking to perpetrate evil, one of the things that, and the more people know that if I try this in the church, they will put it out there. In and of itself, that can serve as a form of deterrence. And so it's really important. And I really hope to every person who would watch this, if you're in a church, start asking these questions of your leadership, all right? To say, hey, what do we do if there's a case like this, or if you see something disturbing, speak up, all right? Lately, we've been seeing a lot of scandal coming out of the Catholic Church and things that have been said, and at least in Canada here, and more of these cases are coming out, and the truth is it's becoming a stain in a sense, right? But imagine if people then who heard about it and were in places of leadership had done something about it. God help us. All right, sir. Thank you so much. So one other thing, again, still on that story, and I think after that we can move on from that story to other things, is back to that point where David did nothing for Tamar. We didn't hear him even mourn for her or try to figure out something to do for her. Now, in today's world, in today's setting as a church, someone comes and says, Mr. XYZ did something to me, or a mom comes and says, auntie this, and I'm saying auntie because it's not, sometimes one of the myths of sexual abuse that we think is that it's only men that do it. No, women can sometimes, we've heard of cases where women are molesting children, or, taking undue advantage of either men or boys too, and a mom comes to say, okay, I think we're having the same internet problem again. Okay, we're back on. So in a case where someone comes to say, this has happened to me, and it may or may not have happened to them within the church. But so like I came to you, right? And I know some of the discussions that you and I have had. And I know that, even though within our own church, PvP, we don't have like a, what's it called? We don't have like a healing center or something. I'm not sure, for lack of a better word. It's not like we have a specific unit that helps to deal with such things per se. But, just between you and I, some of the conversations we've had, the areas of accountability that we have opened up, and all of that. But beyond that, what are some of the things that you think that as churches we can do to help people who have been in that place, and maybe create a different kind of environment that enables people to open up within the church?
Thank you very much. I hope you are hearing me, because I can see that the book is kind of playing pranks on us here.
Yeah, it went off for a while. But...
Thank you. The church should, be a system or a place of zero tolerance for this kind of, of attitude. When it comes to sexual violence, people that need help can be helped, in terms of people who think that they are the perpetrators and they have tendencies, within them to fall into this crime, because it's a big crime. It's a crime. That's what it is. It's not fun. It's not fun at all. If you establish a system of zero tolerance, it's never going to be acceptable for whatever reason, whether demon is the one pushing you, or you push yourself because of emotional imbalance, or you have mental illness or something. There should be no reason at all where anyone should be violated at all. There should be no reason. To be clear on this, from the onset. And disciplinary measures can be put in place, and such measures should clearly be communicated, and create this environment that people knows that this occurrence cannot thrive in a place such as this. So I would, we will see that, if churches that are allowing this to thrive, maybe because it involves their priest, or it involves their bishop, or it involves some other person that is reputable in the organization, at the end of the day, comes out to dent the image of such church. And when everybody sees anyone from that society, well, they just generalize and believes everybody is practicing such an act. It's meant to the image of Christ, to the body of Christ entirely, and it should not be allowed at all. So as a church, we should stand, clearly, and let this be communicated clearly to the world, that this is where we stand on this. That's what I'll say. But then to the question you asked, maybe how can we so if I get that again, how do we help those who are
people who come out, people who are being victimized? How can we help them? What can the church do to help them?
Thank you very much. So the first thing I would say, aside from the fact that the church the church tried to create an enabling environment for, to prevent sexual violence, the church should also create an enabling environment where people can speak out, there they can come and confide in you, where they can confide in the church, and they know that if we bring this up to the church, I will not be condemned, I will not be labeled wrongly, because one of the things that happen why people don't want to come out is people won't believe your story. And when it has to do with somebody who is so reputable and respected, people will doubt your story. Some person will even say is the woman that enticed or seduced the man. Want to destroy his ministry. See, a lady, it broke my heart. This really broke my heart when this lady shared the story with me several years ago, almost 20 years ago now. She told me about her brother was violating her own elder brother, very, very elderly. This brother is the elderly brother, eldest brother of her brothers, and she was the youngest of the siblings. So the parents sent her to stay with her brother. The married brother was violating her every now and then. Initially, she said she was shocked going into the bathroom and finding her brother peeping, trying to peep on her. And all of that. She's dressing up, and the brother is opening the door. All of a sudden, he just bumped into the room, and that until the brother finally came out and actually sexually started violating her sexually. Wow. And initially, according to her, she said she fought and struggled and did everything she could, but the brother would tell her to her face, nobody would believe your story.
Wow.
Your story. And they were attending a very disciplined organization. I don't want to mention the name of the church back in my own country, Nigeria, at that time. They were attending a very disciplined, in fact, I won't talk about the name of the church, but it's the most disciplined church you can ever think of in Nigeria. So you know which church I'm talking about. So you cannot even imagine that such a situation will happen there. But because I have a brother and a sister, the same parents, simply of the same parent. And this lady said, after a while, as she thought about it really, her brother was very reputable in the church, highly influential. People know him very well, spiritual. You could never have thought of him to have done something of that nature. And she is the one that is maybe the modern dressing type, the one that glosses on her lips and things like that. So he said they would say you are the one that seduced me. The lady gave up. The brother continued for years. Wow. I think, I don't know, I can't remember what happened. Maybe they were caught, or the lady went to the pastor to report. What happened? They disciplined the lady, they let the man go. Because the first one that seduced the brother, I think the brother got to a peak, rather, and he went and reported himself to the pastor that he's feeling differently to his sister. My sister is seducing me. They called the lady and disciplined her and let the brother go. And he said because her brother came first to report.
Wow.
She felt the pain. I don't know. I've not seen her for some time now, but she felt the pain so much. Was telling me, I said that was why she left that church. So we found out that when people come out, we don't give them an enabling environment to even trust them that what they are saying is. We are empowered perpetrators, continue to perpetrate that evil. Why? Then the other way we can help as a church, we need to restore the confidence of the victim back to them. Because one thing that violence does to you is it takes away your confidence. It makes you become it brings you so that you lose your self-esteem and you think you are less of a good. So one thing that do to such a person is to help them win back their confidence in themselves. That after all, not your fault. After all, it's not. Yeah. After looking at all these things, whether you visited at night or you sent a message that was provocative or anything, the violence shouldn't have occurred. It was not your fault. Church should be able to give them that enabling environment. And then, counseling as needed can be introduced. Some people need counseling to regain confidence. Some needs to rebuild their self-esteem. Some need to heal. Or as needed, whichever way counseling needs to be given, we need to keep reassuring the victim of sexual violence that they are not less than human. They are good people. They are okay. It was never their fault. Whatever had happened can still be healed, and they have a future to go. So the church can, have all of that. We can start reorientating such people, giving them some reorientation again, so that they can embrace the society one more time. Because one other thing they do is what we saw in the story of Amnon and Tamar. They will go into desolation. They separate themselves automatically. They feel the society is, every man is bad. There's no good in any leader. There's no good. You can't trust anybody. Oh, you can still trust people. You can still see good in everything. But if the church does not help in this way to bring them into self-confidence again and to reassure them that the society is not as bad as this event has painted to them, well. So I think if the church can look into all of those areas that I've mentioned, I believe that we'll be able to help the victims to reorientate back and reintegrate into the system again.
Thank you, sir. And thank you so much. That was really good. And so people, when I say that, I hope that you guys can see why, I am very confident with bringing someone like Pastor Shaba in, because all those pieces he mentioned with helping them regain confidence, providing counseling as needed. I mean, personally, I am not one that I got to a point where I don't trust people enough to share about myself. All right. But when I see someone that I know that, or I got to a point where I almost started figuring out characteristic traits in somebody who I can trust, to not be judgmental, to listen to me and not make me feel, worse than I am or that I was. I started understanding certain traits to look out for. And one of it is being able to just listen to me and just allow me pour out. All right. And Pastor may or may not know this, but there were times when I gave little tests to see, can I trust you? So today you share this bit and you're watching to see what happens. Okay, he didn't do anything, okay, he did not say, don't do this anymore. Okay, and then you get to a point where you're fully confident. And I'm a Christian, so I'm going to give you some Christian pieces of this too, because one of the things that can happen if you share with the wrong person, and I mentioned earlier that had happened to me before and it broke me, is you share with the wrong person and then they put you in the dirt, like it was done to that sister, right? It can even leave you much more broken than before you even went to share to them. But one other thing that I know that I got to a point with was when I was at a point where I realized that I just needed to unburden what was going on with me in its entirety to someone other than my husband who knew. I just needed that extra support, that extra help. And I actively did pray to say, God, who can I talk to? I don't, you know me that I don't trust people that easily, but who can I talk to that, can help me? And his name kept popping up over and over, and I struggled for a while, but eventually I was like, what the heck? Even if he turns the other way, it won't be the first time. So I braced up for any reaction, but the reaction that eventually happened was one of compassion and love and understanding, and one that, just reminded me that doesn't define me, all right? And that, God can still take that story and everything. And honestly, he's a huge, for those of you who know Loud Silences, he's a huge contributor in a sense to that. It was shortly after my conversation with him that Loud Silences was finally birthed, all right? So Thank you so much for all of that. And I just have this weird feeling that sometime going into next year, I may be saddled with the responsibility of maybe championing a specific group that deals with this in our church. But anyway, if I know Pastor well, I have a feeling that is probably coming up somewhere in the pipeline. All right, so people, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. We can take questions. Pastor, we're good to take questions. You can take questions.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so if you have any questions, please feel free. Save a Child Mission, you're here. You said you had questions. Ask your questions. All right. So while we're bringing up any questions, okay, so Pastor already even talked about some of the things that we can do. Actually, he has even answered all of my questions to a very large extent, without me, even really asking. So, Pastor, let's bring this a little bit home to PPP, or maybe just Canada. And maybe we'll learn some of our Nigerian churches that idea. There are some things that even by law here, we are demanded to do as a church. And I feel like those things in themselves helps with some deterrence. Do you want to share with people what some of, I think I can think of one key one, but what some of those things are that even in our own church exists that can help serve as deterrence to people?
If it's a deterrent, we like I said, as a church, if just everybody to hear it clearly, if there's a case of sexual violence as a church, you cannot keep it to yourself. It got to be reported to the government. So if anybody comes around to tell you that, or tells you that someone violates them, and you just stay alone, just stay with counseling and say, what, don't let us say it out. You can be arrested as accomplice as well in that crime, because it's a crime. It's not just a crime to the church, it's a crime in the nation as well. So I want us to be very clear on that aspect. But as a church also, knowing this has really helped us, to know how to move further when it comes to sexual occurrences, experience that was not mutual. If it is mutual, moral, and all of that is a different thing. The church can handle that in the way the church wants to handle it. But when it comes to rape, sexual violence, or we saw a case of pedophile or something like that, we did not report it. That's a problem. So just for everybody to be clear on that. Now, other things that the church can do, is to tighten up the security strategies. Part of it is like having criminal record check for people that work with people of vulnerable, ages. For example, kids, youth, teenagers, and so on and so forth. We are compelled by law to make sure that we have criminal record checks of every handlers, teachers, supporters, volunteers, whatever they do, as long as they work with these children or work with these kids of this age range, we are compelled to ensure that criminal record checks of those people are taken care of, and we have them in our record. And what does that mean? You have to go to the government, to the police, and they got to get some clearance that they are clean and they are not sexual predators. So it's important for the church to keep to that. And in PPP, People's Parish RCCG here, it's one of those things that we take very seriously. With those who are handling our children, those who are handling our youth, and those who are handling our teenagers. It's very important. The other thing that we also could do as a church is the pairing of partners of people. When people are handling, Pete wants to go to the washroom or something. I don't allow just one auntie or one uncle to follow them. It can be two people have to follow them. Because kids come back and they say, "Uncle touches me." Who wants to be a witness that you did not touch? Or auntie, who wants to be a witness? So for everybody to be clean and clear, one thing I want to sound as a warning to the church, and in case any church leaders is listening to me, don't ever say it cannot happen in your midst. Don't ever say we are into this. Our brothers, our sisters, all of them are born again. Yes, they are. But let's create a system that will help them.
Yes.
Let's create that will help everybody. so that we don't allow platform where temptation can easily grab people and make them, go into their a state of vulnerability where they know that they are weak. No, but when we create a system of checks in place, it even helps the teachers, it helps the handlers, to behave themselves and to know that I'm being watched. Like one of my bosses at work, he said, I walk around like I have a body camera on me all the time. Walk like everybody's eyes on you. Everybody's eyes are on you. People, they are seeing you in the washroom. They are seeing you everywhere you are going. They are seeing what you are doing at night. They are seeing how you are, the children you have, their contact and all that. How you treating them? What are you sending to them and things like that? So we have all of these things that we that we put in place in our church here, to be able to curtail this kind of occurrence, because we don't want to see it happening in our midst, and we got to make sure that we work system in place to ensure that this is in our midst. So those are just two of
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much, sir. So I wouldn't want us to, and the reason I had to ask Pastor, and I did not give him the answer for this, is because I didn't want it to look like, oh, because it's your church is why you're saying that these things are in place. But no, these things are actually in place. I work with teenagers in my church, and I have my criminal record check handed in. All right. And if any of those kids ever come out and say, so Spencer did this to me, I am in trouble. The church will be in trouble. And the church is mandated to file a report on behalf of that child against me. Well, God forbid, but but the church is, those are the systems that have been put in place, right? And the church is mandated to file that. And the truth is, those things serve as deterrents. You're mindful, even when you're doing things with good intentions. You're mindful to. I think I shared one time about how I was helping my own son to pee, and then he started shouting and he just said, "Mommy, your hand touched my penis." And then his friend, who was in the other stall, I took both of them in together, rushed out and started shouting, "Why would you touch Timmy's penis? Why would you do that?" I'm like, I had to start quickly shouting. I'm his mom. I was helping him clean it up, and that's another thing too, is just, teaching the kids to the right body parts, so that if anything happens, when they say that somebody did this to me, it helps us, filter truth from their childhood imaginations, right? To say, okay, this child knows what he's talking about, right? Those are some of the things that we do. And I think it's important that we share, because I know maybe for those of us there are a number of people here who are from Nigeria, and, if you're wondering, okay, well, you guys have a system in Canada that works, and it's easy because even the system there, mandates you to put some of these checks and balances in place. Well, while the government in Nigeria may never have that kind of checks and balances, those are conversations that you can start taking to your church leadership to say, hey, how about we try this? Maybe we should put CCTV cameras in the children's church so that we can have eyes, or if anything happens, we can have something to go back and reference. Or how about maybe we have people, put in, I don't know, I guess police certification can be forged as well. But, whatever measures that hopefully you can learn from this to say, these are things that we'll do. Or if we hear about any child reports any teacher, we will take it up, legally. And those things can add on to, serve as deterrents to people from engaging within the church. And who knows, when they even imbibe those things, there's no telling where those people can take that same messaging to our schools, to even our homes. One thing I in my house, we teach my kids is, if you feel like mommy did something to you that you think is inappropriate, tell daddy. If you feel like daddy did something to you that's inappropriate, tell mommy. So even within us at home, because parents abuse children too, right? And even within us at home, there is that extra layer of deterrence that we and accountability that we have woven into. My kids know that anybody comes into the house, they touch you in a way they don't like, you can tell them, and then you come and report them to mommy and daddy. They know that, So, and those are the things that we can also help, We won't get these fights, done like this. It won't be an instant thing, but these are things that as we imbibe them in bits and pieces here and there, and we all do our own part, we can help put an end to this. Thank you so much, sir, for that. So I will take one last question. There's no question from the viewers, so we'll take one last question and we'll wrap it up there. what do you think God's mind is? And you mentioned this verse earlier, and it was one verse that I really wanted us to even look at in Deuteronomy 22. When I saw that verse and I saw some of the things that even God himself puts in place, it pleased me to know that God knew that the human mind is capable of sexual violence. And like I mentioned earlier, in the Old Testament, he put some really harsh laws, man. We really are in a time of grace. But what are some of the things that, even drawing from that particular scripture in Deuteronomy 22, that helps us see what the mind of God is towards protecting people from sexual violence?
Yeah, God, like you said, God has zero tolerance when it comes to the issue of sexual violence. God does not want that at all to occur. And so the first thing that God did for the Israelites, because he knows that human mind, just like you said, is capable of brooding or brooding sexual violence, it puts law. And when we talk about law in those days, law is law. You can't, if you do it, then there's always a consequence. So there's always, for every action. That was what God put in place then. And so that's just to show the heart of God, and God does not want this at all in the midst of his people. In fact, as a matter of fact, he said, if any man violates, and that was the law I quoted during the Amna and Amnon, if anybody violates a woman, sexually, and it was forcefully done. Of course, when it comes to violence, it was done forcefully. The man should be stoned to death. The man should be stoned. Lady should be allowed to do. It's one of the rare places in the scripture that I say that God himself, considered that the lady should be freed because in those days there are some cases like that both of them should be killed because they brought abomination into the land. But when it was done to a vulnerable person, God knows that it is possible for somebody to use force on an unwilling lady, and then the man should be stoned to death. The man should be killed, and that just shows that God is not interested in seeing this kind of thing, in our society. Now, that is Old Testament. Even in New Testament, there are several places in the scripture that God says this should not be found among you. This should not be found among you. And I will read one in the book of Mark chapter 9:42. Jesus Christ said, whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it depends on what kind of sin. It would be better if a great milestone were hung around his neck and they were thrown to the sea. God does not want to force anybody into immorality, into evil, actions and activities, and talk less of violating people. So if anyone violates, God is actually thinking that such a person, is deserves to die. Actually, deserves to die. Mind of God in the beginning, that's the mind of God now, that's the mind of God forever. However, there's mercy, but that doesn't mean that there are no consequences.
All right, thank you so much, sir. It's been an insightful time. It's 1 hour is almost up already. I'm sure Instagram will start counting us down very soon. It's really been an insightful time, and I just want to say thank you so much for being here and for the support that you show to members of our church and the community at large. It's not unnoticed, and we're grateful. And I'm sure I speak the minds of everybody in PPP and everybody who you've been in contact with when I say that you've been a blessing. You and your family, you and we'll call her Mommy Baby. you've been a blessing to so many of us in so many ways. I just want to say thank you again, and it's been really an insightful time with you. So just as a wrap up, people, if you're a church leader, please be sure to create an enabling environment for people to come out and speak about things related to sexual violence. If they feel like someone did something, if they have someone do something to them, please create an enabling environment. As church members, when you hear people have been through certain things, that's not the time to judge them and turn your noses up at them and cast blame to them. be supportive. Thank you, Ato. Ato, I'm so sorry if I murdered that name. I feel like I did. Thank you. And as churches as well, let's start having the conversations of things that we want to put in place to curtail any excesses from anyone regarding to sexual violence, and don't be silent. The series of this is called Undoing the Culture of Silence. This silence has killed us. People have died from this, and I'm not joking. There are some people who just didn't know how to process what had happened to them. They ended up committing suicide. There are people who, while they were being raped, were killed in the act. And we've heard a lot of things. And then even with kids, it happens. There are people who do these things to kids. So let's create an environment let's not create an environment that enables people to continue to do things like this. Let's take a stand as a church and as an individual. The church is not the four walls. It's you and I as people who call themselves children of God. Let's take a stand that is known, so that if anybody comes into our midst and they want to misbehave, they know that there are repercussions, and that we're more than happy to follow through, to the end of it with whatever they bring that is not right, with the backing of the law, of course, and even our own internal measures that we put in place. So thank you once again, Pastor. And I want to say thank you to you guys too that joined in live. And to anybody else who's going to watch this later on, it will be put up on the YouTube channel. And I would say that this is the last Insta Live chat for this year in 2020. So thank you for everybody who has been with me on this journey. This started 5 months ago. So 5 months ago, and then this is 5 episodes. I don't know how I do it. Honestly, it's just God's grace, because sometimes I'm like, oh, I have to do this again, but I know it's important, and that's why I do it. Going into next year, to be honest, I don't know yet if the Insta Live chats will continue in this manner, but I'll continue to put out informative insights, educational programs and awareness on my YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. I'll continue putting stuff out there as much as often as I can hopefully find the time to do. I don't want to promise you weekly and then not keep up to it, but as often as I can find the time to do, I will keep putting things out. And if I see someone who, I think can give us something to learn, I will be sure to maybe put them on the YouTube channel as well and share that instead. But we'll see how this goes going into 2021. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you again, Pastor. I hope we've learned something. Spread the word, spread the news, and join us, doing the culture of silence. Thank you. Any last words, Pastor, before we go? I probably should let you.
Well, I want to thank you for joining today, and thank you for being part of this program. And I thank my sister Anita for bringing me to our program. I really enjoy myself, and I hope that we have learned 1 or 2 things. Please let us speak out. Let's speak out against sexual violence. God bless you all. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, sir. Have a great day, everybody, or night if you're in Nigeria. Bye.